Hello, I'm Tony Guida. This is my New York. Baseball is back. The season opens tomorrow night with a magnificent matchup, the Yankees versus the world champion Washington Nationals. But disturbing questions abound about a 60-game season with new rules in ballparks with no fans, and especially about the decision to reopen this sport while a killer pandemic continues to ravage our country. My veteran baseball analyst and I will tackle those questions for you next. Well, I am delighted to welcome back the two most insightful, the two smartest baseball analysts east of the Mississippi, Anthony McCarron and Marty Appel. And we got a lot to talk about, guys. 140,000 deaths and counting from a pandemic across the country. What do you think of MLB's decision, Major League Baseball's decision, to try playing games in this atmosphere?
Well, as a baseball lifer, as a fan, as a guy who loves the game, I'm delighted, and I think it's good for the public morale, as it was during World War II when President Roosevelt said, keep playing. That said, there's so many safety precautions, and I worry about the safety of the clubhouse men, the people who are not necessarily on the playing field. This is going to be a season, obviously, like no other, and we're just sort of paused to see where it takes us.
Yeah, it's obviously going to take a lot of work and a lot of precaution to get the season in, and who knows if the virus will let MLB complete this 60-game sprint anyway. But I do think it's a good thing. I would like to see everyone in the game and around the game buy into the precautions, maybe 100%. I'm not sure during some of the exhibition games that I've watched on TV that every player is down with not high-fiving and not spitting. And they need to get there, and they need to get there immediately, and they need to social distance in the dugout. And it's just part of the new normal for this season, and it's got to get done. But I do love the idea of watching baseball on TV again. I mean, it is it's the symphony of summer, guys, and we need it.
I'm as big a baseball fan as both of you guys, and I am glad to see baseball again. I actually watched an exhibition game the other night, something I never do. That's how starved I was. But I have a different take. I think this decision is misguided. I miss baseball. I miss going to a restaurant. I miss going to the theater. I miss going to the movies. We can't do any of those. And I recognize those are indoor activities, but, we're doing this, or baseball has arranged to do this, on the strength of testing. It's all about testing. It's what's making this happen, making it possible. And the nationwide demand for testing right now is overwhelming, backlogs. People can't get tests, or they wait a week, 4 or 5 days for the results. Baseball, on the other hand, is proposing to test 900 or 1,000 players and even more people every other day and get the test back in 48 hours. How is that possible in this world?
I think clearly the optics are bad because they've jumped to the head of the line. It's not a good look.
I'm sure there will be some outrage over the idea, that there are all these regular tests for the players, and not just in baseball, but in other sports as well. And, public testing is, such a thing right now.
I think what Marty said, that it's a bad look, is an understatement, at least as far as I'm concerned. This is a terrible look that baseball somehow gets itself, with its own power or with the help of the medical establishment, I'm not sure how, but it becomes, it gets preferential treatment in terms of testing. not only testing, but getting results. And I think that's terrible in this particular time. I'm not sure we should be doing this, but I guess I've made that point. Some baseball players have made that point. Sean Doolittle, the closer of the Nationals, said, I don't know, a week or 2 or 3 ago, that country is worse off now than it was in March when we shut everything down. So how do we do this? How do we think we're going to get away with this?
Frankly, I'm surprised we got to this point. I really thought the season was going to be such a big asterisk anyway. Let's not do it, and let's just, hope we can resume in 2021 at full speed. So I'm surprised we've gotten this far, and whether or not we make it through the whole 60-game schedule still remains to be seen.
And
Sure.
it's pretty revealing that a player's career in terms of time is very short. And I think it's pretty revealing, sort of a larger view of what the players think, that we've had a few big name players opt out of the season and have, been willing to sacrifice 1 year of a short career in the major leagues, to make sure of their safety. They don't think it's worth the risk. And I mean, that tells us what the risk is.
Yeah, I think we all know what the risk is. And Anthony, as you point out, some of the players have said, they've looked at it and said, no. Freddie Freeman, the big star of the Braves, comes to mind right off the bat, but there are others, many others. We got here on the eve of the opening through negotiations that didn't work out and were very contentious between the owners and the players. So the commissioner actually decreed a 60-game season. Let's talk about that, Anthony.
Well, I mean, Tony, I think that we saw the appetizer for what is going to be a bloody war after the 2021 season, when the CBA needs to be renegotiated. And I think that they were basically digging their trenches in the sand. Look, we're all sort of flush with the idea. If you're a baseball fan, you're ready for the games to start and the distraction part of it. But you go back to this labor part of it, and it's knives drawn already, and it's not going to be pretty. And really, it's something to me that both sides, I hope they take this time to look at the way they were perceived before we were flush with the idea of playing again, because they're both unlikable. MLB is unlikable in this negotiation, and the Players Association is unlikable in this negotiation, and they need to smooth that out at a time when they're competing for fans and their fan base is aging. They need to, make some inroads with fans who aren't angry at the billionaires and the millionaires who are fighting over carving up the pie.
Very true. And what I would add to that is, you said it may be the worst ever, Tony, but up until 9/11, every time the collective bargaining agreement came up for renewal, there was always seemingly labor action, a strike, a lockout. It was always contentious. Shortly after 9/11 was time for renewal, and I think both sides recognized this isn't right to do this to the nation when such a grand event as 9/11 just put us in the place that we're in now. So they quickly reached agreement on a CBA after 9/11 and have renewed successfully ever since, even with modifications in between. So we were going through an era of good feeling, but suddenly that may have expired now. And I think we've seen a preview of what's to come next year, which will be contentious.
I think that, and by the way, you guys you don't have to wait for me to ask you a question. You could chime in on each other's thoughts whenever you want. But I'm going to weigh in here and say, in terms of what Anthony said about both sides, being unlikable during the negotiations, which is a kind way of putting it. I'm going to put the blame. I'm coming down hard on the owners. Here's a group of people who had the temerity. Some of them had the temerity. I'm thinking of what's his name, Bill DeWitt, the CEO of the Cardinals, who actually said, he had the temerity to say that, quote, the industry isn't very profitable, to be honest. In the midst of this, street fight over how much of the play is going to be paid. And so the civilians in our audience who perhaps don't understand, the players wanted prorated salaries. However many games they play, they prorate what they were supposed to be paid. That's it. The owners didn't want to do that. Anyway, and some of the players made some ridiculous statements like Blake Snell, I got to get mine. I got to get my money. But as I think it was Ken Davidoff in the Post pointed out, when Blake Snell says something stupid like that in the middle of a spring when people are dying from a killer virus, we at least know. When he says, I got to get mine, we at least know what that is, the number. How much money is he supposed to be paid? With the baseball owners, we don't know because their books are private, all except the Atlanta Braves, which is controlled by a public company. So when Bill DeWitt says it's not very profitable, what I want to say to Bill DeWitt is open the books. Show me your books. What the hell have you been making all these years? You bought this team for $150 million, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago. It's worth 10 times that now, at least. Don't give me this crap that the industry isn't very profitable.
Yeah, I'm with you,
That's
Tony.
my rant. Go ahead, guys.
Absolutely. That's bad faith for him to say those things. Look, and the players are right to say open the books, and you're right to say open the books too. If it's really that bad, why are all these people trying to get in on it? Why is A-Rod going crazy to try to get in on the ownership group to buy the Mets? Why are other billionaires lining up to get in on that? Because it's a bad business deal by people who have done well in business their entire lives to amass the fortunes that it takes to buy a Major League Baseball team? I mean, give me a break.
To me, a larger point perhaps is that back in 1976, when free agency was born, most of the owners were part of the old system. And it was difficult for them to adjust to the new. And we were asking them to open up their wallets like they'd never done. Today, every owner bought into this system when they bought their club. The Steinbrenner family, George Steinbrenner bought in 73. So in a sense, the family inherited the original system, but nobody exploited free agency more than George Steinbrenner did.
And you were there then, Marty.
I was there then, yeah. But today, for the owners to look for modifications to rein back the spending, they bought into this. This is the system they willingly paid for to get in. So I don't have a lot of sympathy for them trying to cut corners and roll back to the old days.
Well, and at a time when the game has relied more on young star power, it's never been like this before. So many young, incredible players are the best players in the game at age 23, 24, and they have control over their salaries for a period of time. Now, look, I like
the owners, just to make that point,
yes,
the owners have control over their salary for what the players think.
Right, before free agency.
Yeah.
Right, and I liken Major League Baseball players at the very top of their game to Hollywood stars. And they should be making, like, it doesn't matter if so-and-so is 20, if he is the leading actor in the world and he wants $30 million a picture, then he gets it. And that doesn't happen in baseball until guys are free agents, and free agency has obviously shifted in recent years. So players who are brought up on a system of expecting to get theirs when they become free agents are now finding it harder, unless you're, the very, very best player in baseball or the top, 5, the top tier. You're finding it harder to get that big payday that you thought you had earned.
I think it's important for our viewers to understand that an average major league career is only 3 or 4 years. The stars go on beyond that and make millions and millions of dollars. But the journeyman player who finally gets his shot at the major leagues is likely to never see that kind of money, play only 3 or 4 years in total, and they got to make it while they can.
Yeah, and this is, I think, the thing that is sticking in the craw of the players collectively the most is the manipulation of by the owners of the salary and the years that like get to free agency. And the current CBA, for our viewers, the collective bargaining agreement, it was a big win for the owners in 2016. Since 2016, I read some statistics that the average salary of the major league players has been stagnant in those 4 years, while the revenues in Major League Baseball have increased tremendously. So that people understand the atmosphere now between owners and players as this game is getting ready to resume. That's at the bottom line. Have I left anything out?
I don't think so, Tony. I mean, I think the point is well made. You know, storm clouds still remain on the horizon over the labor stuff. And it's up to the Players Association and the game itself to prove that it's not going to be one heck of a storm.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the season. 60-game sprint rather than a 162-game marathon. And how does that affect our teams? Any team, but let's talk about the Yankees and the Mets. Marty, what do the Yankees look like a steamroller. I mean, they've got, amazing starting pitching. They've got they went out and got the Garrett Cole, maybe one of the top 3 pitchers in baseball today. They got amazing relief pitching. They got amazing lineup. Where's the weakness? How do they stack up to you in a short season?
They look as good as they've looked any time in the last decade. But remember, they've only won one World Series in like the last 20 years. So things aren't automatic. And in a 60-game season, it's almost impossible to handicap how a team is going to finish the 60 games. If you look at previous seasons, after 60 games have been played, there are always some surprise teams in there who nobody saw coming. And that could very well happen this year, which makes it very hard to forecast.
Well, I want to remind our viewers, in case they don't know, that the current World Series champions, the Washington Nationals, after 60 games last year, were 27 wins, 33 losses. So they were 6 games below 500 after 60 games last year. So I guess what you're saying is anything can happen, right? Right, Anthony?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what will make this season fun. I know a lot of people, a lot of traditionalists have been really wringing their hands over the idea of a season that's so short. But I think there's some fun elements here. Is there some up and coming team, that like the Chicago White Sox, that sort of it has all this young talent that may be a little bit unproven and we don't know how they'll be at the major league level? Are they going to just not know enough to sort of fade at the end and have a 60-game hot streak that carries them all the way to a division title and then, make some noise in the playoffs too? That to me is what's compelling about this. Yeah, how are the Tampa Bay Rays, probably the smartest team in the game, or certainly one of them, going to figure out whatever, tiny little advantage they can exploit because of the shortness of the schedule to challenge the Yankees in the AL East? And I think that kind of stuff is really interesting.
We're going to see the managers really have to step up here, because each game is far more important than in a 162-game season. And they're going to really have to manage as though, well, let's accept the loss here and save the bullpen and move forward. That doesn't work so much anymore. You really got to play every game to maximum ability.
And I've heard some players talk about the idea of veteran leadership maybe more important in the clubhouse than ever before too, to sort of keep teams on, sort of locked in and focused on the idea that, it's just 60 games. Like, you can't have a bad weekend, or, or a bad weekend may hurt so badly that it finishes your chances. It's true, of course, in 162 as well, but it's not as immediate to us as it is in this sprint.
The Yankees could start out 5-9 and all of a sudden they're buried. You may not recover from a 5-9 start.
Let's take a quick look inside these teams a little closer. The Mets, for instance, they don't have the start. This is a team that's historically been built on strong pitching, starting pitching, and not this year. Noah Syndergaard, the big right-hander, is out for the year. He's with injury. And their third starter last year, Zach Wheeler, has gone on in free agency to a competing team, the Phillies. And Anthony, how do you evaluate the Mets for me? Where do you see the strengths and weaknesses?
Well, I think their strength is their lineup. I think they've got a lot of offensive capabilities there. And if Yoenis Cespedes is anything like he can be, and that's a lot to ask after two whole years without playing in a major league game.
Yeah.
But he can really, the DH sort of helps them because they do have a few hitters beyond Cespedes who are bat first types like J.D. Davis and Dom Smith, who would be helpful as potential DH. So I like their offense a lot. I mean, you love the top of their rotation with Jacob deGrom, who, might be the best pitcher in baseball, but they definitely are not nearly as good in the rest of the rotation. I love Marcus Stroman. Don't get me wrong. I think he's really, really good. So they have a nice 1-2 there, but the rest of the rotation has a lot to prove. Steven Matz has been pretty good in summer camp and has gotten some praise. He's working on his curveball, and, so he's got some promise too. He's never sort of pushed it to that next level, though, that we've all anticipated him getting since he came.
Yeah.
Maybe this is the year. They've worked hard on their bullpen too. They need some bounce backs from Edwin Diaz and Gioris Familia.
Well, they need more than bounce back. They need these guys to be able to get people out. Neither of them last year could get anybody out. And if they're going to be successful, at least one of those two guys has got to regain form.
And they need to prove that they can catch the ball, which is something that they have not done well in recent years. And they've got some suspect defensive players dotted around the diamond. And that is a challenge for them as well, because, you kick a few balls around and all of a sudden it's a losing streak.
Yeah. Before we get back to the Yankees, Marty, and a quick in-depth on them, I got to mention Pete Alonso. They're ridiculously powerful and interesting, and a great new face of the Mets, the first baseman. I guess there's no way to tell, is he going to be able to do anything even close to what he did last year? What's your hunch, Anthony, or even you, Marty?
For me, Tony, I think Pete Alonso is the real deal, not only as a player, but as you mentioned, as a personality. He gets it. I think he's going to have a big career as a Met, and I think that he's going to hit whatever the equivalent of 45 homers over a 162-game season. I think he's going to hit that in 60 games.
Marty, what about the Yankees? I mean, we know that they look invincible, but what does anything give you pause? What do you, when you look at the lineup or the bullpen or the defense? What?
Nothing gives me pause so long as Gary Sanchez stays healthy and they don't have to play backup catchers for a big chunk of the season. What I'm really excited about is Garrett Cole, because I was the Yankee PR man when Catfish Hunter was signed, which beckoned in the whole era of free agency. And I get the same feeling about Cole that I had about Hunter, which is this guy gets it. Not only is he a sensational talent, but he understands dealing with the media. He understands baseball history, connection to the fans. I think this guy is going to emerge as really one of the great personalities in New York sports. So I'm really excited to have him here. He's not a kid. I mean, he's been around, and sort of nobody notices those things when you're pitching for Pittsburgh. But very excited to have him here. Yankees have to quickly decide where Andujar plays, whether Urshela is still the real deal at third base. There's some question marks in there, but I don't know any teams that wouldn't take the Yankee roster right now.
Yeah, I agree with you, Marty. Gleyber Torres moving to shortstop this year, I think, is interesting. And when in the spring part of spring training, he had a rough patch defensively. And so these of course are Yankee world problems we're talking about. Your young superstar player is moving to a new defensive position. Can he be the best shortstop in baseball? Offensively, yeah, maybe. Defensively, maybe not. But that's the kind of problems we're talking about. Not like the 3, 4, 5 spots in the rotation, or, a bullpen that's a wreck or anything. They are so loaded and have so much depth also that even if they do get hit with injuries in the way that they did last year, they've got a lot of people waiting in the wings to kind of take up for that. I mean, Mike Ford, who's crushing home runs in summer camp like crazy, if they have a problem at first base or DH, this guy, can eat up a lot of at-bats with power.
It was mentioned the other day that Yankee, in their full roster, pitchers 11 through 20 are all like capable of stepping into the starting rotation. So the depth is incredible there.
Yeah, I gotta wrap it all up here, guys. I'll throw in one extra thought. The Mets have their third new manager in about 10 minutes, and but he's got great bloodlines. He's been with the team, the organization for a long time, Luis Rojas, and the bloodlines. He's Felipe Alu's son, so it's going to be interesting watching him too. But what's even more interesting is, to me, is the chance to get to see both of you guys. I'm sorry it's not in person. Anthony and McCarron, I really thank you. Same to you, Marty, Appel, and both of you guys. Stay well. And as for Major League Baseball, I hope they all stay well and they can put on what could be a very exciting season. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.